Savannah tomorrow for a kids' soccer game, and it's raining there too. And let's see, you got scattered showers and more incoming. There's rain in Dalton, rain in Rome, rain coming back into Clarksville and Habersham County. You're about to get it. It's in Dahlonega right now. Going to be in Clayton and Rabun County. Further south, let's see. Sandersville, you've got it. Vidalia, you're in the clear right now, but Dublin, you've got it. Macon, you got more. Oh, those of you in the south, Brunswick, it's always beautiful in Brunswick. More is coming though. This rainy day, but it's not super cold. But man, the weather is about to change again. We're going to be back into third winter here shortly. I wasn't going to start with this, but now I'm going to start with this, but it's relevant to exactly what I was going to start with. So I will wrap it all together because I, your host, am a professional. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. We have a affiliate here in Georgia. Talk 92.1 WDDQ in Valdosta. And the station is owned by Scott Matheson, who goes on air by the name Scott James. He is also the mayor of Valdosta. He is a conservative. His radio show plays this program and Ben Shapiro and Glenn Beck and Dana Lash, among others. They put us overnight. We really should be live, but we love them. When I was on city council in Macon, Georgia, I warned at the time there was an ethics ordinance. It was a model ethics ordinance being proposed by a good government group. And Macon was one of the first to consider it. I warned at the time that it would be weaponized by progressives against conservatives. Anyone that any group did not like would see the ethics ordinance turn on them. And my prediction from the early 2000s when I was on city council in Macon is coming true across the board. We're seeing progressive groups in particular, although there have been a few conservative groups. Elaine Lucas is a city council or now county commissioner in Macon, Georgia. Her husband, David Lucas, is in the state senate. She and I rarely see eye to eye on things. Occasionally, surprisingly, people would be amazed that there were things we did agree on. She's not exactly a fan of mine. She used to refer to me as Erick Erickson. I kid you not. And did so even after her house burned down and my wife took her family supper. She referred to my child as a blue-eyed Hitler kid or some such. But you know what? She and I could find common ground on a lot of things. And believe it or not, she cares passionately, even though she and I may disagree on stuff, she cares extremely passionately for her community. And the ethics people, the conservatives targeted her with the ethics ordinance, and I thought it was ridiculous when they did it to her. But it is oftentimes progressive groups that do it in the name of good governance, and they are targeting the mayor of Valdosta, Scott James Matheson, with the Valdosta adopted the ethics ordinance. I keep saying Savannah in my head, but it's Valdosta. They keep targeting him, saying that he's violating the ethics standards of the city. Why? It has nothing to do with his job. It has nothing to do with Scott Matheson's job as mayor of Valdosta. It's a nonpartisan job, by the way. They're targeting Scott James Matheson because he is the owner of WDDQ, the radio station, and also maintains his morning radio show host's job. According to the ethics complaint, he gives the appearance of being independent, impartial, and responsible for the people, but is, quote, partisan, biased, divisive, and not concerned about all constituents he is charged with serving. They are using the ethics ordinance to try to punish him for espousing conservative views on radio. You see what they're saying is that you can't actually be the mayor because you're also a conservative radio show host. They're trying to silence him because they don't like him. They don't like that he's actually a Republican. They are accusing him of saying conservative things on radio, including being opposed to open borders and blasting Democratic canvassers for how they were trying to rally voters to the Democrats. The NAACP, community groups, and an academic leftist have filed the complaint. They want to silence this mayor of Valdosta and have him punished for espousing conservative views, claiming that because he espouses conservative views, he cannot be the mayor of all the people. Now, progressives don't do talk radio. They don't do talk radio because they're not very good at it. You got to have a sense of humor. And when's the last time you saw a humorous progressive? I mean, look at the comedies that we're watching on television these days. None of them are funny. You've got to go to off-air comedy specials to actually find humor where you actually might make a joke about someone that causes people to laugh, because you can't remember what's the angry and bittered woman, Hannah, what's her name, where her comedy special was widely ridiculed on Netflix as not being funny, and there were actual think pieces that if you didn't find her comedy special, you were a bigoted, hateful, misogynistic, racist, homophobe, because that's the point. New comedy is not about making you laugh. I kid you, I'm not making this up. People actually said that her comedy special was designed not to be funny, and that comedy can be not funny. And she was just on angry diatribes in comfortable shoes, and it wasn't funny. And if you pointed out it wasn't funny, you were the hateful bigot. Now they're coming for the mayor of Valdosta for daring to espouse conservative views. You know, I pointed this out when I was on city council in Macon. I was filling in on the radio on WMAC occasionally, and then had gotten on CNN where I was a conservative commentator. I knew they would target me with it, and I warned them. I actually was able to get Macon's ordinance. I wasn't able to kill it. I can't remember all the details, but I was able to get it amended that basically anything you said out of council relating to your work or some such at the time, you couldn't be held. It didn't apply. First Amendment issues didn't apply. I wrote a piece this morning, and I want to walk you through this piece because it's directly. I didn't know when I wrote it about the Scott Matheson situation. He goes by Scott James on the radio. I was not aware of it. Did not understand it. Well, I shouldn't say I didn't understand. It wasn't on my radar screen. My buddy Kenny actually texted me this morning and sent it to me, and it was the first I'd heard of it. I'm putting something. If I sound like I'm stalling, it's because I am. You know, a normal radio show host wouldn't do this, but I'm not exactly a normal radio show host now, am I? Now it's there. I want you to do something, and I really do want you to do this. I want you to pick up your phone if you've got your phone with you, and I want you to text the word data to 33777, because I'm sending out a link, and I want you to have the link. I want you to be able to read it. It doesn't cost you a thing, other than maybe your text message does, but text the word data to the number 33777, and I want you to be able to see this. I want to meditate on what I wrote this morning, because I didn't realize that this Mayor of Valdosta situation was going to come up. The first piece, if you get the text message, if you text data to 33777, it also lets me know people actually are listening. I haven't been canceled. I see the text coming in now. I see it in real time. But you need to read this piece. It's the top piece. It just says read this. And I'm going to read this for you on air. Normally I try to put in my own words what I write, but I got it right the first time, and I need to do this. These are dangerous times. One bad word choice, one misunderstanding, and often one false accusation can lead the mob to your employer or even to your door. You can be ruined, and no apology can bring you back unless the apology involves capitulation. A society that prides itself on pluralism thrives with differences of opinion, but increasingly some opinions that were legitimate just yesterday or last week or last year, they're totally acceptable, unacceptable today. Uttering the same words and opinions or inartfully uttering a statement commonly held by other people today can get you canceled when yesterday you could have gotten away with it. You couple the cancellation of opinionation, and there you've got this zeal also to keep mainstream thoughts deviant and make deviant thoughts mainstream. Gertrude Himmelfarb, the philosopher, has a quote I love. Listen to this. Listen, stop your texting real quick, and everybody listen to this quote from Gertrude Himmelfarb. What was once stigmatized as deviant behavior is now tolerated and even sanctioned. What was once regarded as abnormal has been normalized. As deviancy is normalized, so what was once normal becomes deviant. The kind of family that has been regarded for centuries as natural and moral, the bourgeois family, as it is invidiously called, is now seen as pathological. That's Gertrude Himmelfarb. Ironically, interestingly enough, that's Bill Kristol's mother. We see her quote coming true. Archbishop Chaput of Philadelphia, retired now, has a great quote I love, that evil preaches tolerance until it's dominant and then it seeks to silence good. That's what we're seeing with wokeism. It is an evil religion. Gertrude Himmelfarb, essentially, we're defining deviancy as normal and normal as deviant. The nuclear family, the two-parent heterosexual nuclear family, which has been natural and moral for centuries, is suddenly seen as pathological. Black Lives Matters, the organization, actually on its website, in its about page, up until people pointed it out, called for the abolition of the two-parent heterosexual nuclear household. The two-parent nuclear family needed to be gone. And then when people pointed it out, they attacked people for pointing out it was actually on their website. The underlying issue here is how one-sided and disproportionate it is. One day we're arguing over whether two dudes can get married. The next day your daughter's got to compete against boys, and if you don't like it, you're a hateful bigot. The Christian baker's got to bake the cake. The Christian florist has to provide the flowers. But the cultural secular left gets to opt out when it disagrees. One side only gets to impose its values and its will on the other side. This is not a sustainable situation. It will end badly for all of us. That's not even a quarter of the piece that I wrote. I want you to go read it. Text the word data to 33777. You need to read this. This is not a sustainable situation, and it's going to lead to violence. The disproportionate ability of the left to cancel people on the right is radicalizing people on the right in ways they don't even appreciate. And by the way, they think they're justified in doing it. Oh, well, because you're a hateful bigot, you need to be quiet. This is you having to experience repercussions. You can say what you want, but the rest of us don't have to listen. No, they are willfully hiding behind self-righteous arguments to stifle any view they disagree with, calling it hateful and bigoted, and they justify it constantly. They're coming for all of us at this point. It's very clear. They're coming for the mayor of Valdosta because he espouses conservative views on the radio and therefore must be driven from political office for being conservative. This is happening here in Georgia. By the way, notice your Republican legislature still won't provide you a Religious Freedom Restoration Act here in Georgia to protect those of you of faith. This only gets worse.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick.
Hi there. Welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here. Please do. I hope you guys will read what I wrote this morning. I don't often push you to actually do that, but I feel very strongly that everybody needs to read and digest what I wrote this morning. The title of it is Disproportionality Will Lead to Violence. The subtitle is The Union is Fraying and Cancel Culture is Radicalizing Otherwise Reasonable People. You can read it by texting data to 33777. I'm not going to continue reading it, but I want to continue a meditation on this point for a minute. I really hope you will text the word data to 33777, and when you have some time, it's a little bit lengthy, but read it. Several years ago, I got in trouble people got mad at me. I was never disciplined for it. My boss appreciated the comparison. I was driving from a seminary class at Reformed Theological Seminary to WSB in Atlanta when the Charlie Hebdo massacre occurred. Islamic jihadists angry about cartoons of Muhammad showed up at Charlie Hebdo and massacred the people there. And by the way, I think it's worth noting that the terrorists actually won. When's the last time you saw people openly pushing cartoons of Muhammad? They'll openly push cartoons of Jesus to mock Jesus. When's the last time you saw people doing it for Muhammad? You hardly ever do, because the terrorists won. Scared the crap out of people. But the same day that happened, the wokes showed up at the city of Atlanta in a story that got overshadowed by the Charlie Hebdo situation. And instead of murdering someone who offended them, they just destroyed his life. Kelvin Cochran was the fire chief for Atlanta. A couple of years before, he had written a book and had the permission of the city of Atlanta to do it, had written a book for his Sunday school class called Who Told You You Were Naked? It was solely intended for his Sunday school class of young men to point out to them that they needed to live in a godly manner, and that meant don't have sex out of marriage, get married. It was based on Corinthians, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and in particular, it noted within the book that homosexuality is a sin. According to the Bible, homosexuality is a sin, and if you believe in the inerrant word of God, you can't dance around that fact. Now, Catholics and Protestants disagree as to whether it is the actual act or is it the actual definition. I would submit to you, if you define yourself as gay, you're defining yourself by a sexual orientation as opposed to being a creature created in the image of God. And yeah, I'm where Protestantism is on the issue. But it doesn't matter. In a pluralistic society, we're all sinners. Every single one of us is a sinner. And that was also Kelvin Cochran's point. All of us are sinners. We all have our different sins. We all need to be aware of our sins and have a penitent heart. And he was making this message to his Sunday school class. He had permission to write the book. But a retiring captain in the fire department who was a lesbian, once she was retired, filed a complaint over the book that had been written well before her complaint. And he lost his job. He lost his job for writing a book for a Sunday school class where he had the audacity to quote Scripture and write about what the Scripture meant. Happened on the same day the Charlie Hebdo situation, and I got on radio that night and I talked about how the terrorists showed up at the building demanding to scare everyone and silence everyone, and they stormed the building and had the fire chief fired. Well, it went over exactly like you can imagine, but people got the point. At this point, increasingly, the only difference between the wokesters and the Charlie Hebdo terrorists is whether or not you die or you're just destroyed. The woke will try to destroy you for saying things they don't like. You draw a cartoon of Muhammad, you might get killed by a terrorist. You draw a cartoon the wokes don't like, they'll ruin your career and you may never be able to feed your family again. We got to deal with this issue.
30. There
is a religious zealotry on the left these days. It is not it's not good for any of us. And we've got to stand up to it. And there are ways to stand up to it. And I've got some thoughts on that. Yeah, I didn't intend to spend a whole show on this morning, but this hour, we need to talk about this because we're headed towards a country that's flying apart quickly because of it. Y'all, we need to pray for somebody. I don't even know who the person is. But while I was sitting here engaging you and keeping you entertained, somebody called me from Maine. And I'm sure it wasn't the real number. I'm sure it was one of the, but it was an American white male. And that's important here. It wasn't somebody from overseas, wasn't someone with a foreign accent. It was a southern white male accent. And he was calling about my car warranty. And if that is your job, to spam call people about their extended warranty, and it's not just robots and people from Southeast Asia, that we got to pray for whoever is on such hard economic times, that's what they would do. My goodness gracious. All right. I'm gonna delve into this a little more because there are some points that have to be made. And again, I gotta encourage it. I want you to read the whole thing, and I want you to share it with your friends. I want you to contemplate it. I want you to meditate on it. I want you to read this piece that I wrote at my Substack note. You know, you can go to ewerickson.com every day. There's a read button, and you can read all the latest. But this one, I want you to have it. I want you to share it with your friends. It's free. You don't have to sign up, nothing. You text the word data to the phone number 33777. Let me read you a little more of this. I'm going to freeform this one. I'm not just going to read it. I'm going to talk to you. I don't really like to read on, you can tell the people who read their monologues already. I didn't realize this. There are actually radio show hosts who read their monologues. They write them out. I freeform it. It may get me into more trouble, but I think it's a little more authentic. But there are people who read their monologues, and you can tell how someone reads it. There's actually a quite prominent, not Rush Limbaugh. Not talking, he's a genius. No, but there is a very prominent, nationally syndicated radio show host, and you can tell sometimes he has someone write his monologues for him because he says the and a. When I'm talking, if I throw in a the, it's a the, and an a is an And sometimes when you're reading, you'll say the and a. That's how you know that they're reading their monologue. I didn't realize this until I was in radio, and a buddy of mine told me he's reading his monologue again. Like, goodness gracious, you're right. I'm going to freeform this, but I'll delve in and out of the reading here. Walt Disney has fired Gina Carano. She is the former fighter turned actress who was the actress in The Mandalorian. Widely acclaimed for her role. Very pro-woman, pro-feminist, strong woman role. She's been fired. She made an inartful Holocaust impression. Now, a lot of people saw her tweet on the right and they agreed with it. I didn't have massive amounts of problems with it, but I also know that one of the few things that can get people on the left and the right these days, on both of them, equal sides, punished is Holocaust comparisons. Never compare other stuff to Holocausts. At least try. I think one of the few is abortion. And even then, people get mad at you when you do it. And I do kind of get, given the Holocaust, I do get it. But it really wasn't, in the grand scheme of things, fireable. She has a co-host, the star of the show, who is totally replaceable because he wears a helmet all the time. The Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal, who has compared Trump supporters to Nazis and has compared the 21st century United States to Nazi concentration camps. Again, he made a concentration camp comparison. And he still has a job. Another director that Disney routinely employs put up a picture of throwing Trump supporters into wood chippers and encouraging them to die or jump into wood chippers themselves. He still has a job with Disney. But Gina Carano, nope, she's gone. The woke mob didn't like her. And do you know why they started this with her? Because they were upset that she would not put her pronouns in her Twitter bio. I'm not making that up. That's what started the controversy with her, and she's egged them on for a while. There's also, I believe, behind the scenes, something else happening. There's political alignment at Disney. A lot of people at Disney blame Kathleen Kennedy for botching Lucasfilms, ruining the Star Wars franchise. And Jon Favreau and Kevin Feige of Marvel are resurrecting it and rebuilding it. And so there's a culture clash going on. And there are several people who tell me they actually believe that what's happening is that Favreau and Kevin Feige have been protecting Carano, and Kathleen Kennedy decided to toss her to bow to the woke mob. And so the other side leaked it in advance of Disney's earnings calls to put Disney in an awkward position. Kathleen Kennedy's got to go. She's a blight on humanity when it comes to destroying my childhood. But nonetheless, there's some corporate intrigue apparently as well. And Gina Carano was caught in the crossfire between the side of righteousness that is rebuilding Star Wars and making us all happy, like Jon Favreau and then the side that's ruining it and bowing constantly to the woke mob, Kathleen Kennedy. But you got to acknowledge here, corporate America has gone woke. You can't watch a professional sports engagement without being lectured on what a sinner you are because you don't bow to wokeness. Jeep trotted out a rabid partisan who has said terrible things about conservatives and put him in a church declaring we all need the middle. And if you pointed out Bruce Springsteen's prior positions and statements about conservatives and how far left he is, well, you're the hateful bigot. And while these woke corporate monsters and athletes and actors and actresses and activists and media giants lecture America on race and sexuality and anti-biology and equity, they're also willing to glad hand with China and make a whole lot of money. You know, Disney fired Gina Carano for making a comparison between the treatment of American conservatives and the Holocaust. And Disney is willing to do business and does profit from doing business in communist China and filmed Mulan in an area of China that has actual legitimate concentration camps. The National Basketball Association will lecture Americans on Black Lives Mattering, but make so much money off of China, you're not allowed to say that Hong Kong lives matter. Nike is willing to promote a failed football quarterback like Colin Kaepernick to lecture you on America's sins, and then they profit off of child labor and slavery in China. Paramount is part of CBS Viacom, and they're willing to alter the badge on Maverick's Top Gun to get rid of a Taiwan symbol to placate China. They're also tied to CBS News' division. You know, this is a coming problem we're going to have. CNN is part of AT&T, which also owns Warner. When is CNN going to be able to critically question China without Warner being impacted in the box office at China? What about Comcast, which owns NBC and MSNBC? When is it going to be punished for the coverage that NBC gives? China's going to block Universal from the box office. Disney has ABC and ESPN. We've already seen Disney collaborate with China, make money off of China, block ESPN from showing Hong Kong protesters at basketball games. When are their box office going to get punished if ABC does something? Ironically, the only media network out there right now that can critically cover China is Fox News because it sold its movie division to Disney. The media institutions, the corporations, the woke progressives, they'll let China cancel and literally exterminate millions of people, and then here we'll cancel anyone who violates woke orthodoxy at the drop of the hat. Things that were literally permissible last week, you can no longer say this week. But what really is the problem here, honestly, it's the disparity in cancellations, and it's going to boil over to violence. We're getting our first early taste of it. At CNN, Oliver Darcy and Brian Stelter are employed to cancel conservatives with whom they disagree. CNN, if you'll remember, actually had a reporter show up at a woman's home and lecture her, an elderly senior citizen woman in Florida who shared something on Facebook that turned out to be one of the Russian things in 2016. Showed up at her home to shame her. Remember the guy who did the Nancy Pelosi thing on Facebook? They outed him and tried to ruin his life. The media did. The New York Times employs woke reporters whose sole job is to cancel people, particularly in technology, who dare disagree with them. And the disparity is causing people to support Donald Trump. And a lot of them were willing to turn a blind eye to what happened on January 6th because they know something and are willing to admit something that people on the left are not willing to admit. That the left does, with the media, want to silence a lot of conservatives. The media, corporations, the political left, they have become an American Taliban. They're not going to take your life, but they're willing to tear down statues. They're willing to destroy lives. They're willing to ruin careers for wrong speak, wrong thought, wrong belief. And I'm not talking Confederate statues. They are literally, the American Taliban is willing to tear down George Washington and Abraham Lincoln for not being woke enough in the 17 and 1800s. And then their boundaries shift constantly. You can't keep up. I mean, they fight each other eventually because the woke aren't woke enough. But it's a disproportionate power that the right doesn't have. The left can cancel the left and the right. The right can rarely fight back. And they blame the right. They blame Trump. They blame talk radio. They blame everybody else but themselves for this increasing radicalization of the country. If the right can't voice its views and people on the right can be punished for things that the left isn't punished for, there's going to come even greater antagonism, and it's going to ultimately lead to violence. A lot of people on the left think they are more civil and more tolerant and more open-minded, but they're really not. They say, well, we're tolerant except of intolerance, and then they define intolerance down to everything the left doesn't like is intolerant and therefore must be punished. And yet there's a problem. Donald Trump won 74 million votes on Election Day and was within 43,000 votes of keeping the presidency. You've got a disproportionate power on the left to shape and govern cancel culture, and yet the right can still get power. And at some point, they're going to get power back, and you're not going to be willing to blame them when they're hesitant to give it up, because you see what the left does when they get power. They're out of power, and they still have disproportionate cultural power to punish people on the right. There are people who are going to radicalize because of this. I know people, good, reasonable, optimistic people who are increasingly radicalizing, increasingly pessimistic, and increasingly thinking the country's going to break up because they will not leave me alone. There is no rest. Every day they're in my face, forcing their values on me, forcing me to do things that I don't want, that my 2,000-year-old faith says are sins I've got to affirm or I'm going to be punished. These are dangerous times. The nation really is on the verge of cracking up. And I think we should work like hell to keep it together. But it requires us to tolerate each other and to tolerate views we hate, to tolerate letting people live their lives in communities of like-minded people. You know, I have this radical position called federalism, that a socially conservative person should be able to move into a town that is socially conservative, that bans abortion clinics, doesn't compel people to have gay marriages, and doesn't let boys use girls' bathrooms. And the left should be able to move into a town that actually uses taxpayer dollars to subsidize the abortion center, lets the boys and the girls compete together and go to each other's bathrooms, and encourages everyone to turn up and celebrate the gay marriage. Where the majority consensus in the community governs, and the small but vocal minority with media and corporate power can't bully the rest of the town into rearranging their entire lives and values for that small minority. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's the way it one time worked. The only exception to this is race, because this nation fought a very bloody war and the right side won and changed the Constitution, and race is off the table, as it should be. But whether you're black or white, you're conservative, you want to live in a town where there's no transgender bathrooms and no one has to bake a cake for a gay marriage, you should be able to. And if you're on the left, white, black, you can pick your gender or say you have no gender and live there and have gay marriages that the whole town turns out for, and abortion on demand on every street corner. And we should be able to live and let live and each get along, and then the federal government just do the minor things that all of us require of one common federal government. The problem is that some are going to hear me say this and refuse to acknowledge the validity of this, or they're going to add a bunch of buts and caveats to make it meaningless. They're going to deny that people of cultural groups should be able to live in communities of cultural common interest without a minority coming in and forcing change. The only way to de-escalate this situation is for the left to accept that it can only regulate its own side and the right can only regulate its own side. The left should have no cultural power to be able to determine who are the valid voices on the right. The right should have no cultural power to determine who are the valid voices on the left. And when there's common concern and common cultural entities, you must have consensus on both the left and the right to toss the person, to cancel the person. And when you can't cancel the person because there's common shared cultural institution, you got to go out and then that's when you start your own group. But this unilateral power by the left, this disproportionate power to punish people the left disagrees with, is going to lead to violence. It's going to lead to the crack up of the union. And a lot of them won't care. They've got this such high-minded self-righteousness now about their values. And that's unfortunate. But there's not going to be a unilateral disarmament on the right. And I fear that January 6th is going to be the beginning of something bad, not the end of an era that we can move beyond as a country. Because too many people on the left will hear me saying all of this stuff and think good riddance, or why should we listen to you, or these people are just getting what they deserve. And the fact that people on the left think people on the right, people they disagree with, views they don't share, are getting what they deserve or just being held accountable, or it's the consequences of their actions and they can still say it, but we don't have to employ you. Their justifications for their cancellations is going to lead to the crack up of this country. And it's going to lead to a lot of violence. And I abhor it, won't participate in it. I'm Christian first. These cultural clashes, God transcends them, and you got to look to Jesus. But a lot of people won't. We will turn to our lesser angels over this. And when people on the left finally realize what's happening, it'll be too late. So consider you warned.
Well connected and well respected. It's Erick.
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Glad to have you with me here. All right, we have a short segment here because I ran long. I ran long and rambling on about cancel culture. And, well, it works out to all of our benefit because I think I feel compelled to just mention the story, but I really don't want to dwell on the story. May God have mercy on all of our souls. Exclusive from the Daily Mail. Embattled QAnon Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene openly cheated on her husband of 25 years with a polyamorous tantric sex guru and then moved on to another affair with the manager at her gym. Polyamorous, for those of you in Rio Linda, I feel like I should say. Polyamorous, poly means many. The practice of engaging in multiple romantic relationships with the consent of all the people involved. I don't know if it was full polyamory, meaning didn't care the sex of the person. I got no idea, but this has been rumored for a while now. Now here's the punchline to all this. So my evening show on WSB used to be owned by the Cox family. The Cox family, one of the wealthiest families in the country, and Cox Chambers was in the top 20 of richest people in the country, if not the planet. And she has a grandson, Jim, who owns a series of gyms, who is Jim owns gyms. And he owned a gym up in Alpharetta, CrossFit box, and Marjorie Taylor Greene apparently worked for him. And he's all over this piece. I don't know if he's the source of it or not, but he's all over it. Well, Jim, now you'll recall this story. Jim owns that gym in Wokeville, Atlanta, East Atlanta, where they won't let police officers and firefighters come in because they don't want the hipster white woke kids who go to the gym to feel intimidated by the oppressive culture of the police. So they banned police officers from using the gym. This is when you're that rich, you can be that out of touch and aloof and do stuff like that. But he's the guy who did all of this stuff, and he quoted all over the story about Marjorie Taylor Greene and her relationships. These rumors have been out there. They have been out there. There are more rumors. I'm sure they'll come out too. But yes, there's your headline of the day from the Daily Mail. Embattled QAnon Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene openly cheated on her husband of 25 years with a polyamorous tantric sex guru, a phrase I hope to never utter again in the history of this radio show, and then moved on to another affair with the manager at her gym. The guru has pictures all over Facebook of him naked in waterfalls and things like that. Oh, the stuff we talk about. See, I left this for the short segment. I feel like we should have a moment of silence on the program and just like reset. We're going to reset. We're going to move on when we come back because we got a lot of other stuff to talk about. We got to talk about the Ravi Zacharias stuff at some point, but I may put that off. Raphael Warnock is under investigation, and he's staying real quiet right now. There's merit to the allegations against him. I want to delve into that story when we come back right here on the Erick Erickson Show across the state of Georgia. Hello there. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, if you would like to be a part of the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Very quickly, please, and those of you who were here last hour, bear with me. I wrote a piece this morning that I feel, and if you're a long-time listener to the show, you know I rarely do this, and I feel just this strongly about it. I really, really want you to read what I wrote this morning about cancel culture and how the disproportionality of it is going to lead to violence. As the left has a disproportionate power to silence people on the right for views they don't like, at some point people are going to lash out, I'm afraid, violently. And the only way to rein this in is for the left to stand down on cancel culture. And it really is hypocritical. It is a disparity. It is increasingly ruthlessly, almost religiously fundamentalist by the left. As I have pointed out repeatedly now, and you know, when I first did it, I got a lot of blowback from people on the right, and now everyone largely nods along with me that, you know, those jihadists who stormed Charlie Hebdo and killed everyone, at this point, really the biggest difference between the wokesters and those terrorists is that you're not going to die by the left, but if you draw a cartoon that they don't like, you're going to be destroyed. I mean, murder seems to be the dividing line between Islamic jihadists and wokesters these days. Both of them are willing to destroy a person, one just permanently with death, and the other permanently with refusing to allow you to have a career ever again, or provide for your family, or be seen or heard in public. It's going to lead to massive radical pushback, and I have so many friends on the right who have been sunny optimists, and they're radicalizing over cancel culture. And I don't think people on the left realize what's happening. And I really strongly, highly encourage you to read this. And the way you do it is just text the word data to 33777. Text the word data to 33777. Now, before I move on, because I was going to talk about this topic, and I hate to leave people who've called in the last hour into this hour and keep them on hold forever. It's just bad manners. So I'm going to go to Athens with a phone call to start this hour. Jeff, you're next. Welcome.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for taking my call, man.
Sure.
I just had a couple of questions for you as far as House Bill 127, the gun control bill that Sheila Jackson from Texas has proposed.
Mm-hmm.
Just with, it's like universal background check, licensing for your gun, registration, mandatory insurance. There's a whole list of stuff. I wanted to see if this is like political theater, whether, you know, they're going to try to put this up and then try to pass a lesser gun control bill. And then the second part is, if some aspect of this does get passed, like what recourse do the states have in order to counteract any of this gun control legislation that they might try to push through?
Okay, let me break this down for you in a couple of ways. So her legislation probably can't get past the House. They want to push some gun control messages, and that's the key word here, messages. The reason that hers probably can't get past the House is because even the House Democrats kind of understand when Sheila Jackson Lee pushes something like this, it tends to inflame people on the other side who otherwise wouldn't be inflamed. It's like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Sure. If she's the headliner on a piece of legislation, you know it's going to piss off so many people on the right that they're going to make a lot of money off of fundraising, and Pelosi is smart enough to understand that. But the underlying arguments of what Sheila Jackson Lee wants are licensing for guns. You can't do licensing for guns per se at this point because of the Heller decision. It's a constitutional right, and so you can't license a right. But tax increases, national database, background checks, all that stuff. You know, Joe Manchin and Pat Toomey, Republican of Pennsylvania, Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia, they want to end the so-called gun show loophole and do expanded background checks as well. The ultimate problem, though, for all of it is the filibuster in the Senate. There's a mounting effort in the Senate by progressives to essentially say you support racism if you won't get rid of the filibuster because you're denying passage of another Civil Rights Act. That's not going to be persuasive to people like Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema, in large part because if you get rid of the filibuster, they are the pressure point for every single piece of legislation. And so they don't want to get rid of the filibuster. As long as the filibuster stands, what? Go ahead.
Do you see this as being played out as more of like a play to the base, and it'll be more, there was proposed legislation during the Obama era to, for gun control, but nothing ever really came to pass other than bump stocks, and it was actually a Republican, Trump, that did away with that. So do you think that this is like just more of the same?
Yeah, I think so. It's essentially Republicans are bad. Everyone loves this. We're being reasonable. They're not. You should vote for us. You got to remember, it was gun control groups that really helped the Democrats this time. Like Lucy McBath here in Georgia, her spending was 3-1 against Karen Handel, in large part by gun control groups who actually ran healthcare ads, not gun ads. So they got to pay back these groups by introducing the legislation, even if it can't be passed. And it probably can't be passed. Now, what they can do is under reconciliation, which is a process that lets things go through the Senate for budget reasons without a filibuster once a year, they can do like a gun tax. They could totally do that.
Sure.
Not a policy change. If they wanted to do background checks, that would be a policy change, and that would be a violation of Senate rules. But just raising taxes isn't, and they could do that. And that's probably what they're going to do, is raise taxes on guns. Ironically, though, Jeff, they really don't have to do that right now because there's so much scarcity of ammunition. I was looking at a place the other day, and I could buy 2 boxes of 9mm rounds. I mean, I'm about to get into trying to make my own ammo. So
even finding the materials to be able to do that yourself it's just it's almost cheaper just to buy it.
Yeah, it is. Well, go ahead.
Is there anything at the state level that if they do pass a tax, is there anything at the state level that, the state of Georgia, for instance, could do to counteract that tax, or is that?
The only thing they could do, and I think this would be an awesome idea, if they did a gun tax at the federal level, the state could put in a tax credit or a tax deduction for whatever the gun tax is at the federal level. You get to deduct it from your state taxes. They could totally do that and offset it. That would actually be hilarious.
Yeah, we have a Republican legislature at the moment. I think that maybe folks should start contacting them if this becomes an issue.
Yeah, I think so. And by the way, have you heard what Utah did yesterday?
Negative.
So Utah decided yesterday to get rid of its concealed carry law and decided that anyone automatically gets concealed carry by virtue of owning a gun in Utah.
That's awesome.
It is. And why aren't we doing that here? I mean, it is your constitutional right to keep and bear arms. Why do you need a permission to carry it concealed? Now, in Utah, actually, if it's open carry, if it's open carry, there's some quirk in there. You cannot open carry without a license, but you can concealed carry in public. And the main reason they did that is businesses in Utah were essentially begging them, this actually will put off some of our customers. It makes employees uncomfortable, and it makes those people the primary target, and they don't realize it. So concealed carry good.
Sure.
So in Utah, you don't have to have permission in Utah now for concealed carry, which is the governor, by the way, signed it into law. It was passed by the legislature and signed into law in roughly 2 days, so that the wokesters couldn't get involved and try to shut it down. So that's it. I hope that's helpful for you.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thanks very much for calling in. The phone number here is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I was going to talk about this Utah situation later, but it's worth talking about. The Republican legislature and the Republican governor decided that you've got the right to keep and bear arms. There's no reason to prohibit you from concealed carry in Utah. The presumption should be that someone has a concealed weapon on them. And so they changed the law, and they're moving forward. And I just think that it's a good no-brainer, and it's something that we here in Georgia should do. I don't know why I should have. Now, part of this, full disclosure here, I let my concealed carry permit expire, like long expired, and I got to go through the process again. and I haven't done it. I don't have a lot of time between this show and the next show to be able to do stuff like that, and I got to get it done at some point. And then you got to get your fingerprints, and you got to make an appointment. It's just a hassle. I am all in favor of getting rid of the need for a concealed carry permit. But nonetheless, Utah has done that, and Georgia has not. And I think Georgia should do that, get rid of the requirement for a concealed carry permit. All right, let's reset. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. When we come back, we will get into the Raphael Warnock story.
There's not my truth or you.
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. You know, you can go to ewerickson.com all the time. It transfers you over to ericericksonshow.com. You can get the recipes. Up at the top, there's a listen live button, a podcast button, and a read button. And if you're interested in carrying the show, you can do that as well. Now, also, and most importantly today, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to text the word data to 33777 and get this piece I wrote on cancel culture. Right now, though, we need to talk about something here in Georgia. This is from Martin East at the AJC. The state election board voted Wednesday to move forward with a case against Raphael Warnock and the new Georgia project based on an allegation that the organization was slow to deliver over 1,200 voter registration applications to elections officials in 2019. The board referred the case to the Attorney General's office for further investigation and potential prosecution. Warnock, a Democrat elected last month to the U.S. Senate, is named as a respondent in the case because he was the CEO of the New Georgia Project. The organization has said its corporate document filings with the state misidentified Warnock when he was actually the board chairman. Warnock and the New Georgia Project didn't immediately respond. Representatives of the New Georgia Project hand-delivered 1,268 voter registration applications to the Georgia County Elections Office beyond the time allowed, said an investigator for the state. State election rules require voter registration organizations to submit completed applications within 10 days after they are received by the voter. The State Elections Board submitted the case on a 3-0 vote, with David Worley, the board's lone Democrat, recusing himself. Raffensperger is the chairman of the board but doesn't usually vote except to break ties. The allegation is the latest point of conflict between Republicans and the New Georgia Project, a voter registration group founded by Stacey Abrams. In a prior case alleging contractors for the New Georgia Project forged signatures and submitted incomplete forms, the Attorney General's office hasn't brought charges in the 3.5 years since it was referred by the State Elections Board. In November, Raffensperger accused New Georgia Project of sending voter registration applications to people in New York. The organization's CEO has said the organization didn't mail voter registration applications to New York. Instead, it sent postcards to volunteers who could then mail them to potential Georgia voters with information. Warnock resigned as chair in January 2020. Republican Attorney General Chris Carr's office will now investigate the case. So essentially, voters handed New Georgia Project their voter registration applications, and the organization dragged their feet on getting them back. Now, why would they do that? Well, one reason that it's done, I don't know that this is the case, but one reason it can be done by groups, and the reason the law is there, is because you then want to sit through and sort them and say, is this person a Republican or a Democrat? Well, I think we're going to slow walk this one because they're from the party I don't like. By the way, it's not just New Georgia Project that could do this. There are Republican and conservative groups that could run afoul of this as well. That's why the law requires that the applications be returned within 10 days, because you don't want hanky-panky going on. And, you know, Stacey Abrams, I was going to get to this later, but Stacey Abrams has this write-up in the New York Times on how to win, how to turn your state blue. And New Georgia Project was incumbent on that. How to turn your red state blue. It may take 10 years, do it anyway. And it goes on essentially to outline a path forward. Consider, for example, the mandate to create a clear message. Obviously, this isn't a problem unique to Georgia. Red states often lack a coherent political argument for the existence of a Democratic Party. Leaders say, in effect, we're Democrats, we want progress. But their ambition doesn't meet voters' realities, where they define them only in reaction to what Republicans say about them. In contrast, Republicans offer clear messages that voters can adhere to. This is basically, I mean, I read this thing. I can't believe they would what do you mean they would publish this? Is she giving away? Is this? No. This is what Republicans did in Georgia in the 1990s. This is the funniest thing about reading this stuff. They can spruce it up. They can put a Democratic veneer on it, but the Republicans do this too. This isn't some sort of deep, dark secret. That's why they're so willing to publish this information. It's why they're so willing to be open about what they did. It's what Republicans used to do, and then they got comfortable and dropped the ball. The whole reason the South changed to the Republican Party is not just Bill Clinton. It's because Republicans knew that there were shifts happening, and they sought to spend 10 years making the case to change. Georgia did not turn Republican overnight. It was 2006, really, when the Republicans swept everything. At a time, Democrats swept everything nationwide. In Georgia, Republicans swept in 2006. It began in 2002 with Sonny Perdue, and then in 2004 with the legislature, everything rolls over, and then in 2006 it locks in. But it started in the mid-90s. It started when Saxby Chambliss won Congress in 1994, and the Republicans flipped the congressional seats. The Democrats were going to redistrict in 2000. It was messy. There were lots of lawsuits. Remember, in 2000, for all the talk about Republicans and gerrymandering, if you were around in politics in 2000 and saw the way the Democrats drew the map, just to give you an example of this, there was a state Senate seat. It was Seth Arp from Columbus, who also represented Macon. Now, if you're in Georgia, if you're not in Georgia, Columbus and Macon, it is a 2-hour drive from Columbus to Macon along US 80 at the time. The Democrats drew this district for this member of the state Senate to capture the northern part of Columbus, and then literally the district followed US 80. There was no population on either side of the inside this. It literally followed the road and then got to Macon. It looked like a barbell almost. You got two big weights on either side of this long line, which is US 80. And so you had a member of the state Senate having to drive from Columbus to Macon. The 11th congressional district wrapped around in on itself, such that there was one point in Upson County that this district, which covered Rome to Columbus to Upson County over towards Macon, and then parts of the Atlanta suburbs, at one point you could pole vault over one side of the district to the other across another congressional district. That's what the Democrats did in 2000 to try to hold on to power. And the Republicans were still advancing, and they were laying the groundwork. And you know who it was doing a lot of this? It was David Schaefer, who's now the chairman of the Republican Party, who I guess has gotten lazy and forgotten how to do it given what happened this year. The Democrats are only doing what the Republicans did to flip the South to the right. And so Abrams can put this in the New York Times. It's not some major revelation. I'm reading through this article. It's a pretty lengthy article. And all I'm thinking is this is nothing but what Republicans did. A litigation strategy, a legal strategy, a grassroots strategy, a media strategy, and you put it all together. And you pound and pound and pound, and you knock on doors, you identify voters. They're not doing anything new. This isn't a major revelation. And yet I'm getting emails from people saying, is this for real? Is this what you do? Yes. I've got an entire bookshelf here in my office, and there are books across the entire bookshelf on how to run for office. And all of them say what they're saying here. And these books, they're written by Democrats, they're written by Republicans, they're written by independent campaign strategists, they're written by political science professors who study campaigns, and they all say the same stuff. None of this is new. How do you do precinct data analysis? I know how to do precinct data analysis. How do you project your turnout in a precinct? How do you find voters in a precinct? All of this stuff. These aren't major revelations. They may be to some of you who aren't in politics, and they're eye-opening, but the key here is that Republicans can do this stuff too. They shouldn't be dismissive of this because it's what they used to do in the 90s and the early 2000s. There's nothing new under the sun, including this stuff from Stacey Abrams. I got to give her credit. She knows her stuff. She knows how to do it. And the Republicans used to. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I need to give credit where it is due. I wouldn't have otherwise thought about it. Tony on Twitter pointed this out, and looks like he's in Dodge County. And thank you, Tony. He is listening, and he pointed this out on Twitter. 288 years ago today, James Oglethorpe founded Georgia. It was administered by the trustees for the establishment of the colony of Georgia in America under a charter issued by and named for George II. They implemented a plan called the Oglethorpe Plan. Interestingly enough, Georgia was explicitly founded with the prohibition of slavery. Interestingly enough, it was obviously one of the colonies that revolted and was the 10th state to ratify the Articles of Confederation and the 4th state to ratify the Constitution. But yes, Georgia was founded today. It was founded, the trustees turned the government over to the crown in 1752, and it became a crown colony with a governor appointed by the king, and the Oglethorpe Plan that had precluded slavery disappeared. But there you go. Here's your. We should do this. We should do this just because. The state bird, the brown thrasher. The state dog breed. Well, this is pathetic. I'm sorry. This one's just lame. The adoptable dog is the dog breed of the state. How sweet. Constituent interest. I'm sorry. I don't mean to mock, but just pick a dog breed. In Georgia, it should be the black lab anyway. And I don't even have one. But let's just be honest here. The fish is the largemouth bass. The flower is the Cherokee rose. The insect is the honeybee, not the mosquito. The mammal is the North American right whale. The reptile is the gopher tortoise. The tree is the southern live oak. The state food are grits and peaches, even though we produce more blueberries now. The fossil is the shark tooth, and the gemstone is the quartz. Aren't you glad to know all of these things? That's right. 288 years ago today. Today is Georgia's birthday. Now, thank you again, Tony, for pointing that out. Now, I think we can probably move to other things. We should probably move to other things. One of those things that I want to move to is Andrew Cuomo. This is pretty devastating. How do I want to say this? I get in trouble sometimes from people on the right for engaging with people on the left, for having friends on the left, for getting along with people on the left and not being willing to view them as the enemy. There are also people on the left who get in trouble for doing the same with people on the right. I know progressives. I've actually got a couple of very prominent friends on the left, and we keep our friendship absolutely secret. Because, I mean, they would ruin their careers to be friends with someone like me, given what they do for a living. It's kind of sad, isn't it? It is. I can be more open about it, but I don't say stuff. I mean, for example, I know a couple of celebrities in Hollywood, and if people knew, man, I mean, it would every progressive activist would be out there. You got to denounce this guy. You got to denounce this guy. I mean, look at poor old Chris Pratt. The number of times the left comes for him because he goes to church. But one of the reasons that I do entertain people on the left, I engage with them, I read them, I'm friends with them, is because oftentimes there are things when you get into the conservative intellectual bubble you can miss. But the same is true on the left. If you've watched CNN for the past year, or MSNBC, or you've read the New York Times or the Washington Post, You had no idea what Chris Cuomo was doing until the last couple of weeks when it was safe to finally turn on him because Donald Trump was gone. It is well documented among conservatives what Andrew Cuomo was doing in New York City and in the state of New York. Janice Dean is a meteorologist for Fox News. She and her husband lost their parents to COVID in nursing homes, trapped in nursing homes, where Andrew Cuomo had sent people who had COVID back from hospitals to those nursing homes, and it spread. She has been demanding to hold him accountable, and the media largely ignored her. So, well, she's at Fox. She just doesn't like him. It turns out she was right all along. This is from the New York Post. Governor Andrew Cuomo's top aide privately apologized to Democratic lawmakers for withholding the state's nursing home death total from COVID-19, telling them, quote, "We froze," out of fear that the true numbers would be used against us by federal prosecutors. The stunning admission of a cover-up was made by Secretary to the Governor Melissa DeRosa during a video conference call with state Democratic leaders in which she said the Cuomo administration had rebuffed a legislative request for the tally in August because right around the same time, Donald Trump turned this into a big, giant political football. He started tweeting that we killed everyone in nursing homes, DeRosa said. He started going after Phil Murphy, the governor of New Jersey, started going after Gavin Newsom, started going after Gretchen Whitmer. In addition to attacking Cuomo's fellow Democratic governors, DeRosa said, Trump directed the Department of Justice to do an investigation into us, and basically we froze. Because then we were in a position where we weren't sure if what we were going to give to the Department of Justice or what we give to you guys, what we start saying was going to be used against us while we weren't sure if there was going to be an investigation. That played a very large role into this. After dropping the bombshell, DeRosa asked for a little bit of appreciation of the context and offered what appeared to be the Cuomo administration's first apology of its handling of the situation. But instead of a mea culpa to the grieving family members or the more than 13,000 dead seniors or the critics who said the health department spread COVID-19 in care facilities, DeRosa tried to make amends with fellow Democrats for the political inconvenience it caused them. She says, "So we do apologize. I do understand the position you were put in. I know that it's not fair. It's not our intention to put you in the political position with the Republicans." The General Assembly Health Committee Chairman Richard Gottfried of Manhattan immediately rejected the expression of remorse, saying, "I don't have enough time today to explain all the reasons why I don't give that any credit at all." The State Senate Aging Committee Chairwoman Rachel May, who was battered during her reelection bid last year over the issue of nursing home deaths, ripped into DeRosa as well. Now, today, what's so funny about this, the New York Post ran this story yesterday. Today, the New York Times runs it. Governor Andrew Cuomo and his top aides were facing new allegations on Friday. Actually, they were facing it yesterday in the New York Post, that they covered up the scope of the death toll in the state's nursing homes from the coronavirus after admissions they withheld data in an effort to forestall potential investigations into state misconduct. The latest revelations came in the wake of private remarks by the governor's top aide, Melissa DeRosa, and a cascading series of reports and court orders that have nearly doubled the state's official toll of nursing home deaths in the past 2 weeks. The disclosures have left Mr. Cuomo, a third-term Democrat, scrambling to contain the political fallout as lawmakers of both parties call for censure, including stripping the governor of his emergency powers, federal and state investigations, and resignations of Ms. DeRosa and other top officials. In the recording, DeRosa says she basically froze. They admit they covered it up because they didn't want people to know, because Donald Trump was saying not nice things about him. For 4 years, Democrats have demanded impeachments of Donald Trump for, among other things, covering up data. And they excoriated Republicans for standing behind Donald Trump. We're now about to watch the Democrats expose their hypocrisy by standing behind Andrew Cuomo. I dare them to impeach him. While Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, was moving nursing home residents with COVID out of nursing homes and barring people from entering nursing homes and barring the return of nursing home patients who had tested positive for COVID, Andrew Cuomo was sending a bunch of senior citizens out of hospitals back to nursing homes to their deaths at the exact same time. And the American media was excoriating Ron DeSantis, which they still do, and praising Andrew Cuomo for his handling of the virus. They were praising Andrew Cuomo in juxtaposition to Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Andrew Cuomo was covering up the data, so it made him look good. Will the American media apologize? Will anyone hold Andrew Cuomo accountable? Will he be impeached? You had incestuous leg humping on CNN every night with Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo. Jeff Zucker loved it. You had Chris Cuomo having Andrew Cuomo on every night, building him up as a hero. I mean, it's the most incest we've seen on TV ever. And the media loved it. They loved Andrew Cuomo. They loved that Chris Cuomo could get him on. CNN loved it. It was good for CNN's ratings, and they never stopped to ask if what conservatives were saying might just be true. And it was true. Chris Cuomo hadn't really covered this story. He hadn't had his brother on. If he did, he'd probably softball the interviews. Where are the calls for him to resign? Where are the calls for his impeachment? Where are the calls from the media about a cover-up? Ask yourself, if this was Donald Trump, what would they be doing? But it's not. Which gives some great context to the farce in Washington, Chuck Schumer's sham impeachment. You know my position on that impeachment. But the fact that the Democrats are in high dudgeons about all of this, and Andrew Cuomo was covering this stuff up, and the media was engaged in performing a leg humping with him forever. And you had the Chris Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo show on CNN while all this was happening. Where's the accountability? Where's the accountability? Or is there just hypocrisy?
You can follow Erick around social media at EW.
The phone number, if you want to be a part of the program today, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Let's go to the phones. Rooster in Athens, you're up next. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Erickson.
Good morning.
I have to give you a compliment. I was hanging out with some friends that are across the aisle, and they were talking about they like to listen to you because you're down the middle and you talk about the facts and don't spin it.
Well, that ruins my street
compliment.
cred with the conservatives there, Rooster. Look, honest to goodness, I'm in this fortunate position in American politics at this point where I just hate everybody, so I can call it like I see it.
I think that if we study history, it's bound to repeat itself. I've heard that over and over and over, and I see it whenever I look out. It seems like, the Communist Manifesto is being played out. And the funny thing is, in the Communist Manifesto, it talks about taking over both parties and controlling the media and controlling, our rights that we're given. And it just seems like I'm seeing a lot of that kind of stuff right now.
Yeah, look, I think that we are, and you've got the wokesters are trying to embed within the GOP as well, and even some of them within the conservative movement. And there frankly is a cancel culture on the right as well. There's increasing intolerance to heterodox opinions on the left and the right internally. What's so interesting here is that guys like me who have really not changed my positions and principles are somehow considered not conservative anymore by a lot of people who weren't even active in politics just 4 years ago. And there's a deep frustration among a lot of friends that I have who really have been the intellectual thought leaders on the right for a long time and still are, that there's an increasing intolerance on the right for anything outside of really obedience to the president as opposed to obedience to principle. We see this worse, though, I think, on the left in that they have wrapped up this. I mean, it is a weird religious fervor in wokeism, and I think we got an obligation to call them out. Frankly, let me say this. This is a good time for me to do this before I get to other phone calls. Today, the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan in Noonan. They've been with us since the beginning, and they're not afraid to support us and stand with us, even as people demand that they boycott or cancel their ads. And I hope if you're a business that you may go to them and take your business. If you need loans, access to credit, they're good people, the Frost family. They have our back. I've got their back. FirstLibertyGA.com is their website, FirstLibertyGA.com. Now, we're talking six-figure loans, not small loans. But if you're growing and you need somebody to help you get to yes with lines of credit, capital, loans, go to FirstLibertyGA.com. Now, I say that, and I encourage you guys to text the word data to 33777 and consider subscribing to my Substack email. I have intentionally tried to build this program contemplating cancel culture where I can say things that some people in radio can't. I have individual relationships with each of our radio stations. We're not syndicated by a syndicator. And if we get syndicated by a syndicator, we're working to make sure that it's one that understands what I'm doing and will have our back. We have individual relationships with our advertisers. We've got individual relationships with the stations. We got individual relationships with the listeners. And we can do a lot of what we do because people subscribe to my daily email. It's $7. And their subscriptions help me cover the cost of the satellite and the employee salaries for the board operator, the producer, call screener, my assistant, our digital team, so that we can get our message out. I don't actually get a salary yet. We're continuing to grow the show, and I'd rather every penny go into grow the show than come to my pocket when I can live off my salary for my evening radio show. We're always looking for new advertisers who are with us in our mission to grow and essentially to put me in a place where I can be a voice for people who can't speak up, because cancel culture will come for them when I'm making myself, in a way, building the show, making it more difficult for cancel culture to come. And I have long been a conservative, but I do believe, and this is why I think people on the left will listen to me to understand what conservatives think, is I try to start from the position of here's what's actually happening. No BS, no spin. Here are the facts, just the facts. I'll tell you what I think about the facts. I'm an evangelical Christian conservative who believes in the inerrant word of Scripture. And I believe in Hayek and Russell Kirk and Burke, and I'm a conservative philosophically. But I also know that my side depends on intellectual honesty, and I should be able to assess the facts down the line and say, here are the facts first. Now let me tell you what I think about it. So all I can do is encourage you, if you want to support something like that and our growth, is to subscribe to the daily email. Only $7. You can go to ewerickson.substack.com, but you can text data to 33777 and get that link. You should text data to 33777 and read my piece this morning on cancel culture. But there's got to be room on both sides for intellectual honesty, and increasingly on the left, there's not. It's you got to be woke or you got to shut up, and that's a problem, which also gives the right an intellectual advantage, because we can, even though there's cancel culture on our side, we can still be more open on our side and draw people to us without scaring them over wokeism, as long as we push back on this QAnon BS. Now, let's go back to the phones. Dale, you're going to be next. Welcome.
Howdy, hey, look, there are like 5 of us that had voted for Trump, and we decided to go ahead and give President Biden his Senate. We voted for Reverend Warren Ossoff, but everybody that came to Georgia begging for a vote promised a $2,000 stimulus check.
Yeah.
Now, we could use it.
Yeah.
And they're just saying 1,400, and they're acting like they're not even. It's a
So Dale, just so you understand Biden's position here, he's saying that the Trump administration at the end of his term pushed out $600 checks, so they're going to do $1,400 checks, and that gets you the $2,000. No one on the campaign trail said that. No one explained it. And so you've actually got Warnock has come out now. Raphael Warnock has come out and said, you know what? Maybe we should do more than $2,000. Maybe we should do $4,000 or $5,000.
Then maybe he'll get our vote again in 2 years. That's what he needs.
Well,
that
doing that is going to drive it into the ground. So part of the problem here, Dale, you got to understand this. Economically, if they throw too much money into the economy, it's gonna fire up the economy so much that it is going to cause an inflationary event, and that's going to crash the stock market. Some guy yesterday, I didn't bother dealing with him. He's only got like 3 followers on Facebook. Says, well, we're seeing inflation. Look at the stock market. The stock market's going up. When we talk about inflation, we're not really talking about stock prices. We're talking about prices of consumer goods, and stock is not a consumer good. When you pour a bunch of money into the economy and a lot of people can go spend it, you drive up the supply and demand curve. It goes a little cattywampus, and the supply goes down, demand goes up, and so the price has to go up.
30.
Wages have to go up, all this stuff. And so the Democrats have to be very cautious about what they put into the economy, or they could trigger a recession, which they may very well do, and that recession will come due to them in November at the ballot box next year. And the GOP can say, look, your own economists were saying you were going to trigger this recession and win.
10.
And the Democrats know it. Hello and welcome. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you want to be on my show, how southern did that sound? 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Because I'm here in Georgia and most of my listeners on radio are here in Georgia, I'm going to look at the radar real quick because it's still ugly at my house, but it's not raining right now here in Macon. It's going to rain, I think, again at some point. But right now, yeah. Let's see. Why is Atlanta clear air? Most of the rain is in North Georgia. It's not in the Atlanta area. It's spread across my listening area across North Georgia from really north of Rome. Let's see, just north of Jasper. It's up in Ellijay, Blue Ridge, Blairsville, Cleveland, Clarksville. You got some rain that's going to be coming in, and then down in South Georgia, it's starting to come in, making its way across Soperton, Dublin, Columbus, and more coming. We got a lot of rain coming into the listening area. So my kid, my son is 12, and y'all don't care about this, but who cares? It's my show. So he's hit the age where they will play in the rain. You know, smaller kids in elementary schools, typically if it's raining, they don't play their soccer games or their little league games. Particularly baseball, you don't play because you'll tear up the field bad. Soccer will play a little bit in sprinkling, but not in rain. Well, he's reached the age where they play. If it's not thundering and lightning, they play. But it's supposed to be, he's got a game tomorrow up near Atlanta, and it is 100% chance of rain after 2 days of rain. And even the coach is saying, probably going to get canceled because of the conditions of the field. We're kind of hoping so. We want to go see his grandparents. In any event, I'm going to move on now. I am going to move on, and I don't want to move on. I'm stalling because I got to talk about a topic, and I don't want to talk about the topic. I don't. Oh God. I'm a professional, and I don't want to talk about the topic, and it's my show, so I shouldn't have to talk about the topic. But I think I got to talk about the topic because nobody else is going to talk about the topic, and the topic needs to be talked about. Okay. Before I do, I'm going to stall it. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it, and I've got to talk about it. Before I do, I wrote a piece this morning. For those of you who have been here, you've heard me say this. For those of you who are just tuning in, if you're still here, text the word data to 33777. I wrote a piece about cancel culture this morning and how it's going to lead to violence. The left is radicalizing people on the right by a disproportionate ability to cancel people on the right they don't like. And it's going to lead to violence. And you need to consider this, and so please consider reading it. Text the word data to 33777 so you don't have to pay. It's free. Just please read it. Please share it with your friends. We need to be discussing this and thinking about it. I spent the whole first hour on it. I don't want to go back to it. Please. All right, enough stalling. God help me. A 4-month investigation found the late Ravi Zacharias leveraged his reputation as a world-famous Christian apologist to abuse massage therapists in the United States and abroad over more than a decade, while the ministry led by his family members and loyal allies failed to hold him accountable. He used his need for massage and frequent overseas travel to hide his abusive behavior, luring victims by building trust through spiritual conversations and offering funds straight from his ministry. A 12-page report released Thursday by Ravi Zacharias International Ministries confirms abuse by Zacharias at day spas he owned in Atlanta and uncovers 5 additional victims in the United States, as well as evidence of sexual abuse in Thailand, India, and Malaysia. Even a limited review of Zacharias' old devices reveals contacts for more than 200 massage therapists in the United States and Asia, and hundreds of images of young women, including some that showed the women naked. Zacharias solicited and received photos until a few months before his death in May of 2020 at age 74 of cancer. Zacharias used tens of thousands of dollars of ministry funds dedicated to a humanitarian effort to pay for massage therapists, providing them housing, schooling, and monthly support for extended periods of time, according to investigators. One woman told the investigators that after he arranged for the ministry to provide her with financial support, he required sex from her. She called it rape. She said Zacharias made her pray with him to thank God for the opportunity they both received, and as with other victims, called her his reward for living a life of service to God, the report says. Zacharias warned the woman, a fellow believer, if she ever spoke out against him, she would be responsible for millions of souls lost when his reputation was damaged. The findings, alongside details revealed over months of internal reckoning at RZIM, that's Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, challenged the picture many have had of Zacharias. When he died in May, he was praised for his faithful witness, his commitment to the truth, and his personal integrity. Now it is clear that offstage, the man so long admired by Christians around the world abused numerous women and manipulated those around him to turn a blind eye. Miller and Martin attorneys Lindsey Barron and William Esselstyn, hired by his Ravi Zacharias International Ministries to investigate, interviewed 50 witnesses and examined phones Zacharias used from 2014 to 2018. In the end, the lawyer said, "We are confident we uncovered sufficient evidence to conclude that Mr. Zacharias engaged in sexual misconduct, though the investigation was not exhaustive." The Ravi Zacharias International Ministry Board released a statement alongside the investigation expressing regret and taking some responsibility. Ravi engaged in a series of extensive measures to conceal his behavior from his family, colleagues, and friends. However, we also recognize that in situations of prolonged abuse, there often exists significant structural, policy, and cultural problems. We are trusted by our staff, our donors, and the public to mentor, oversee, and ensure the accountability of Ravi Zacharias. And in this, we have failed. Was a big fan of Ravi Zacharias. You know, he listened to me, encouraged me. We did not get a chance to meet in person. We had wanted to. We had actually spoken of getting together. And then his cancer progressed and he was dead before we could get together. This is a man who led a lot of people to Christ internationally. Led a lot of people to Christ. And was monstrous to people behind the scenes. And there will be people who he led to Christ who will doubt. And that doubt could be made manifest through their lives. And he preyed on people who were of faith and probably caused them to challenge their faith. Now, I believe that once saved, always saved, that you can't take from God that which God holds. And I think that Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, his wife, his daughter, his family, deserve credit for allowing an investigation to go forward, for not covering it up. Now, there were some issues. There was a non-disclosure agreement with a woman named Lori Ann Thompson, and the ministry would not release her from the NDA. But overall, they allowed the investigation to go forward. There's a moral here, and this is one of those times where I wish I sat down ahead of time and kind of scripted out what I wanted to say, because I do this all off the top of my head. I do it every day because I think you have an obligation to hear me candidly. And sometimes, like this time, there are long pauses of silence where I'm thinking what next I must say, should say, want to say thoughtfully. I want to say this. We're at a point in society, and it's not just our society, it's globally, where people are losing trust in institutions. We listen to Tucker Carlson, not Fox News. We listen to Rush Limbaugh, not the radio. We read our favorite website, not the internet. We trust Donald Trump, not the Republican Party. We believe the person who tells us what we want to hear, not the person necessarily speaking truth. We want to connect to a person who inspires and uplifts, not the person who is possibly prophetic but telling us what we don't want to hear. No prophet is welcome in his hometown, to quote the Lord. And we make idols of the fallen. God can use bad people for good. Don't think he can't. God used Nero. Nero literally lit the streets of Rome by crucifying Christians and burning their bodies, and yet the faith grew. The persecution of the saints in China is causing an explosion of church growth. Did you know there are more Christians in China than in the United States right now? There are actually more Christians in China than there are people in the United States, if you believe some reports. Do you know the fastest growing area of the world for Christendom? Do you have any idea what country Christianity is exploding in faster than anywhere else? Iran. But we should not be disabused of the fact that we're all fallen. And all of us need to be held accountable. And I want to speak on this very briefly before we go to break. Oftentimes, prominent people in and out of faith get surrounded by yes men. And they can do no wrong, and people turn blind eyes to them. And then there are those who are very good at covering stuff up. I had a friend once who turned out to be a total sociopath. I had no idea. I to this day, it shocks me. I had no idea. And a lot of people had no idea about Ravi Zacharias, and those who did, some of them suspected and turned a blind eye. So let me tell you the lesson I have learned. Everyone needs good friends. Everybody needs friends. Everybody needs people they can be explicitly open with and trust that those people keep their secrets. But we also need those friends that who will keep our secrets, who will also tell us that, you know what, you've got to repent. And we will hold you accountable if you don't change your behavior. People have to be willing to give up friendship in order to be true friends. And I'm very mindful of what I do, and in the grand scheme of things, I'm really a nobody, and already at a point where I know I've got to have friends around me who are willing to pray for me, love me, and expect better of myself than I sometimes expect of myself. And you get into positions where Ravi Zacharias is surrounded by people who say he's serving the Lord. And he can, in the private of his travels and the like, hide a darkness that is there. And few will find out, and many, because they put his ministry above his own soul, refuse to hold him accountable. And this is one of the great problems of our era, particularly people of faith, where you're more interested in the transactional relationship you have with a person, or you see it as the greater good of the ministry, and so you're less interested in that person's soul. I don't know how Ravi Zacharias has wound up before the Lord. I don't. It's an awkward day of judgment for him, I'm sure, whether he saved or not. And oftentimes in churches, when you decide that you're serving a cause greater than yourself, you give yourself license then to behave badly because, well, the cause is so great. I'm working so hard. I can behave in this way and get a pass. Christian, guard your heart. Surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable. Your true friends will hold you accountable. You know, I can tell who my true friends are because when I screw up, they come to me privately and we talk about it. And they show grace. Hey, I disagree with what you said, and here's why. Can we talk about it? There's no Twitter stream or Facebook post or really even a text message, just a phone call, sit on the front porch. But a friend who I know is coming lovingly, and a lot of people, you get to positions like Zacharias, they don't have it, and then they can behave badly because they don't. God uses bad men all the time. We should pray for the people affected. But we also shouldn't dance around this and say that this is an unfair attack. It is the truth. And ultimately, the truth always prevails, even against people like this so many of us looked up to. There's only one person you will never be disappointed in. And you should make sure your trust is in him and not ordinary descendants of Adam.
News and in-depth analysis from Erick Erickson.
please do consider texting data to 33777. There's no fee to read my piece on cancel culture. You really need to read it. If you text data to 33777, you'll get back a link to my daily email, but the top one, it will say read this, and it's the cancel culture piece. I really hope you'll read it. Let's go to the phones. Mark in Atlanta, you're going to be next. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good. So I'd like to congratulate you for talking about this difficult topic. I think it's courageous, especially as a Christian. So I'm a Catholic. I've been a Catholic my whole life. And
okay, well, let me pause. For those
gone...
listening in South Georgia, that means he's a Christian.
We believe in the Trinity.
Yeah.
All of that, you bet. I guess the one thing us Catholics are probably guilty of is we don't study the Bible as well as we should. But yeah, our doctrine is very similar. So here's the thing, we're all fallen, and I had to learn this as we dealt with so many Catholic priests. And in fact, Cardinal McGarren was defrocked. That was a huge thing, and he was out of the D.C. area. Mm-hmm. And if you read the Bible, you know what? King David certainly wasn't a good guy either.
Right.
So regrettably, we have a tendency to deitize men and women among us that are leaders, but we're all fallen, and it's difficult. It's just so hard.
It really is.
Deal with this.
We want to build up people who encourage us, and sometimes they're not the people we thought they were. And I think everybody in life eventually encounters someone that they're attached to who they realize this isn't the person I thought they were. And it's
right.
Part of life in a fallen world. Look, Mark, I appreciate you calling. I really do. Thank you for that. It is difficult. I mean, I have long thought the world of Ravi Zacharias. I know people who were led to Christ by Ravi Zacharias. And those people are the ones I am praying for today. And we got a couple. I've got less than 30 seconds, so we've got more calls on this and other stuff. I want to talk about other stuff, but I'll take these calls when we come back. 877-973-7425. 877-973-7425. I'll take your calls when we come back. There is other stuff I want to talk about, including some of the data out there with COVID actually is really encouraging right now. Hello there, it's Erick Erickson. So, we had a guy who called in. I was really hoping to talk to him, who is skeptical of the allegations. And you know, I'm finding this is one of the most frustrating parts of dealing with stuff today. When you put your faith in people and something comes out about that person that you don't like, it is the easiest reductionist thing for you to say, well, how do we know they're true? I mean, this could be a scam. And we had someone who wanted to call in and question, how do we know this stuff about Ravi Zacharias is true? Maybe they're just out to get him. Here's how, unfortunately, we know it's true. First, it was Ravi Zacharias International Ministries that authorized the investigation. They then gave the lawyers access to Ravi Zacharias' property. They looked at his cell phones and his computers. They found naked women, pictures of them with contact information. They interviewed the women. The women admitted what happened. They found other text messages corroborating statements made, documentary evidence. I mean, there was an entire trail on his phone of lurid details and sin. Mark today, February 12th. I've been on radio for just over 10 years now. 10 years and a day. 10 years, 1 month and a day. This is the first time I've ever genuinely thought I was going to throw up on radio. This pains me. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be the entertaining guy. We're going through this together. It pains me. And then to have people go, well, I don't believe it's true. Well, you may not believe it's true, but it's true. His wife and his family are acknowledging the truth of it. They have his cell phones. They have the pictures. They have the text message threads. They have all of it. I mean, I've learned these days that I can lead people to the truth, but I can't make them accept it. And that's part of what we're dealing with in a post-truth society. People don't really care what the truth is unless it affirms what they believe. And people like Ravi Zacharias could get away with that. Ironically, one of the people who preached against post-truth society profited from post-truth society sexually profited from post-truth society because he knew people would believe him over the accusers because of who he was and what he did and how many people he led to faith. But it's all true. And if you're a praying person, you really should pray for the people who worked for him, for his family, for the success of his ministry. His ministry was a big thing. He's got branches around the world of faithful followers trying to save souls. And how many of them are just gut punched today? I feel gut punched by this. I knew I needed to talk about it and I didn't want to. And I want to move on now. All right. I want to talk a little bit about, oh, come on. Let's talk about the Lincoln Project because there's news. I'm going to talk about that instead because this is rather news. This is newsy news. Hang on. Where is this? Yasser Ali has this. The FBI is investigating allegations against, hang on. I want to turn the recorder on for this one. The FBI is investigating allegations against longtime GOP political consultant and Lincoln Project co-founder John Weaver, according to two sources who said they were contacted by FBI agents. Those sources told me the agents inquired whether Weaver ever touched them inappropriately or sent or requested sexually explicit material when they were underage. The FBI asking potential witnesses about allegations of illegal conduct does not necessarily mean that someone is the subject or a target of a federal investigation. It's also unclear what the scope of the FBI inquiry is. Weaver, a Republican strategist who helped form the anti-Trump Lincoln Project, has been accused by dozens of men of behaving inappropriately towards them. So far, the stories that have been shared publicly focused on men who accused Weaver of online harassment and promising employment opportunities in exchange for sex. Emails to the Department of Justice and Weaver asking for comment have not been answered. Allegations against Weaver were first reported in the American Conservative and then Forensic News. A third story in the New York Times revealed 21 men accused Weaver of online harassment. The allegations included Weaver asking a 14-year-old boy about his body. Now, then there is the Associated Press story that we should get to related to all of this. Here comes the Associated Press. Last June, the Lincoln Project was on a high, led by several prominent former Republican consultants that slickly produced ads attacking President Donald Trump, made it perhaps the best known of the so-called Never Trump organizations. The group tried to claim a higher moral ground in an effort to purge Trump from the GOP. Money flowed in by the tens of millions of dollars from donors eager to help. But within the organization, a crisis was brewing. In June of 2020, members of the organization's leadership were informed in writing and in subsequent phone calls of at least 10 specific allegations of harassment against co-founder John Weaver, including 2 involving Lincoln Project employees, according to multiple people with direct knowledge of the situation. The email and phone calls raised questions about the Lincoln Project's statement last month that it was shocked when accusations surfaced publicly this year. It's also the first known suggestion Weaver was targeting a Lincoln Project staffer. The organization announced Thursday evening, after the new details reported by the Associated Press, that its board had decided to retain a best-in-class outside professional to review Weaver's tenure. Despite the initial warning in June, and you know what, I want to look at my camera. I want to make eye contact with some of these people. Some of whom I respect, by the way, some of whom I like, even though we may disagree. But here's the thing. Let me read you this from the Associated Press. Despite the initial warning in June, the group took no action against Weaver and pressed forward with its high-profile work. For the collection of GOP consultants and former officials, being anti-Trump was becoming very good business. Of the $90 million the Lincoln Project raised, more than $50 million has gone to firms controlled by the group's leaders. There is no evidence that the Lincoln Project buried the allegations against Weaver for business reasons, but taken together, the harassment allegations and new revelations about spending practices raise significant questions about the management of one of the highest profile antagonists of Trump. The revelations threaten the stature of not just the Lincoln Project, but also the broader coalition against Trump. So the Lincoln Project says they just found out about the John Weaver allegations, and yet in June of last year, apparently there were staffers from the Lincoln Project who were complaining. They made raised $90 million, $50 million went to people about their firm. How are they any different than what they accused Donald Trump of? In fact, when you look at the upper echelons of the Lincoln Project, again, some of whom I know and like, but I don't think even they would disagree with the fact that to a degree they're mercenary political consultants. Many of them actually gave rise to Donald Trump through over years backing candidates, John Weaver in particular, backing candidates who were anathema to the base of the Republican Party and took great pleasure in rubbing the Republican Party base's nose in their victories. Over time, those people rebelled and decided it was time to burn it all down because of people like John Weaver. And it appears they may possibly have been covering stuff up. Maybe. They possibly, more likely than not, knew a whole lot earlier than they thought, and now there are allegations that they were digging in through the direct messages of someone who worked for the Lincoln Project and were possibly trying to smear. How are they any different? You know, this is one of the superpowers of Donald Trump, is that the people who go after him oftentimes wind up behaving just like him. John Weaver was apparently doing this for a very long time. But there's more than that, because you see John Kasich has used John Weaver for a very long, long time. What did John Kasich know about John Weaver? Are we going to claim that he was clueless? Because, you know, I mean, if there were rumors about John Kasich or John Weaver, there were rumors about John Kasich. Not the sort of sordid stuff about John Weaver, but I mean, there are lots of rumors out there, lots of stuff flying around. And John Kasich gets an awful big pass from CNN about how he never knew. Now, listen, he may not have. I've talked about Ravi Zacharias. A whole lot of people in Ravi Zacharias' orbit had no idea what was going on. Anyone who has been friends with someone who was a sociopath knows that one day you're caught out of the blue that, oh my gosh, I was friends with that guy. But no one's asking the tough questions here really about the John Weaver situation. And now we know, again, this is from the Associated Press, not exactly a friendly pro-Trump group. That going back in June of last year, members of the organization's leadership were informed in writing and in subsequent phone calls of at least 10 specific allegations of harassment against John Weaver, and they're claiming they only just found out about it. If we held the Lincoln Project to the standards they insist on holding Republicans who support Donald Trump, they would have to cancel themselves. None of this is good. It seems like they were covering for a not good person in the same way they accuse people of covering for Donald Trump, who they say is a not good person. It also sounds like they were as big a grift machine as they accused Donald Trump's team of being. It takes one to know one, I guess. The pot calling the kettle black, I guess. I'm not sure how they have any moral authority to make the case against Republicans they claim they think they can make. And again, this is the problem here. And some of these people are good people who don't necessarily need to be maligned with the Lincoln Project, even though they're involved with it. And I know that makes some of you very mad that I can be friends with people with whom I disagree, and you can't anymore, and I'm sorry for your broken soul. But the bottom line is, if you're going to tar and feather others, you better make sure your own house is cleaned up and not covered for. If you're going to say others are grifters, you probably don't need to be raising $90 million and sending $50 million of it to yourselves. The problem here is that if we're really honest about it, a lot of these guys don't really have principle. They have party affiliation. And their angst and anger over Donald Trump is that he marginalized them from their party from which they were profiting. And many of them, John Weaver especially, was, it sounds like, on hard financial times, and then gets exiled by the Republican Party. And all it is petty revenge because their gravy train is gone. That's like Max Boot. Max Boot is a guy who people on the right listened to for years, and then Donald Trump comes along and makes it clear that Max Boot's views are no longer welcome within the Republican Party, so he jumped ship to the Democrats. And many of the views that he had, he repudiated because the Republicans continued to believe those things, and the Democrats wanted something else, and it makes it look more like Max Boot was more interested in sitting at the table of power and having his head patted than actually having any sort of principles. Jen Rubin at the Washington Post is the same thing. She has completely contradicted herself on positions the moment Donald Trump embraced those positions because she's so broken and she's all about herself. She had no principles. She's got no conviction. She would slander any Republican to promote her Republican, and then when the Republicans had enough of her, she's willing to slander them all and go be a Democrat and repudiate the position she had. She's got no intellectual honesty, and frankly, she's the most predictable person in the media. I can read something without knowing it's her and tell it's her because it's so predictable and also so hysterical. I've never known a media company to give someone who is that predictable and that boring an outlet to be that hysterical. All of these people are rank opportunists, and they're in it for themselves. They got marginalized by Donald Trump, who came along and repudiated their views, and that's why they turned on him. Had Donald Trump given them a seat at the table, they'd have been humping his leg like the people they hate. But he didn't, and so they hate him. Rank opportunists all. No principle here. There is no principle here, and that's one of my frustrations. The media elevates people against Donald Trump who are just like Donald Trump and behave just like Donald Trump. Donald Trump out there sexually harassing women. John Weaver out there sexually harassing men. Donald Trump's campaign accused of being grifters. These people are grifting people as well, taking advantage of liberals instead of conservatives, but doing the same thing. They're all the same sort of people. These are all the sorts of people all these people claim to be against, and all the base really hates, and yet they keep getting sucked in. Clean up your own house. Somebody's going to clean it up for you. The Republicans need to know that. The Democrats need to know that. The conservatives need to know that. The progressives need to know that. I need to know that. You need to know that. The church needs to know that. The Lincoln Project needs to know that. When you're full of a bunch of people who lack principle and are just mercenaries and opportunists, and you're running an entire project not because you really oppose the guy, but because you're cut out of the money-making scheme on the side that you want to be on, don't be surprised when people find ways to discredit you. At least have some principle out there, folks.
Well connected and well respected. It's
Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, well, there's really not a ton of time for you guys to call in, and I need to read you this headline. This is the headline in the New York Magazine. The predator in the Lincoln Project, John Weaver, used his power to get jobs for young men he allegedly harassed. His colleagues were warned. That's the headline. There's another lesson here. How quickly they turn on you when you're no longer needed. Let's be honest here. If this stuff was known in June of last year and the media didn't go after it, one of the reasons is because the Lincoln Project was useful to the left last year. When you're useful to the left on stuff like this, they'll give you a pass, and then the moment you're no longer useful, they'll turn on you too, because you're not really one of them, and that's one of the things that a lot of these Lincoln Project guys are having to deal with. Man, how the mighty have fallen. They were going to start a podcast network. I think they were going to start some sort of studio to deal with news TV deals, get on TV. They were going to make money off of this. Well, they're no longer useful because Donald Trump lost. There's a new sheriff in town, and guess what? The Democratic political consultants don't want to really share in the glory with the Lincoln Project because, in large part, they know the Lincoln Project really didn't do anything to defeat Donald Trump. That's one of the dirty little secrets in all of this, is that the Lincoln Project really wasn't that effective. They raised $90 million from progressives and sent $50 million to their own companies. They made some ads that got media buzz in Washington, D.C., but didn't really do anything nationwide. They puffed themselves up in social media, but really didn't do anything. And now they're no longer useful to the Democrats because the Democrats, they don't need a group of unsuccessful Republican operatives. And that's part of the thing here, with the exception of maybe John Weaver getting John Kasich. They really weren't that successful. They've never been. And they were party bound without principle. They ran a lot of people for office. Maybe they stopped other people, but they didn't exactly get a lot of people elected. And, well, now, okay, they're no longer useful. And there will be hell to pay for them now. Okay. I wanna spend a moment on this in the New York Times. There's a column out there today from Farhad Manjoo in the New York Times. Aliens must be out there. The sun is not special. I know there's a curlish thing to say about everyone's favorite celestial body, our planet's blazing engine and eternal clock, giver of light, life, and spectacular Instagram backdrops. Awesome as it is, though, the sun is still a pretty ordinary star, one of an estimated 100 billion to 400 billion in the Milky Way galaxy alone. And the Milky Way is itself just one galaxy among hundreds of billions or perhaps trillions in the observable universe. Then there's Earth, a lovely place to raise a species, but as planets go, perhaps as unusual as a Starbucks in a strip mall. Billions of the Milky Way stars could be orbited by planets with similarly ideal conditions to support life. Across all of space, there may be quintillions or sextillions potentially habitable planets, which is more than an estimated grain of sand on all of Earth's beaches. So isn't it hubris to assume that we're the only life around? Since Nicholas Copernicus posited nearly 500 years ago that Earth is not at the center of the universe, much of what humanity has learned about the cosmos has confirmed our insignificant ordinariness. We live aboard Carl Sagan's pale blue dot, a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. In all the vastness of space and time, then, doesn't it seem likely, maybe even obvious, that there exist other ordinary beings on other insignificant motes? You may respond with the physicist Enrico Fermi's famous paradox: if life is so common, why haven't we seen it? Now, in a dazzling new book, Extraterrestrial, the first sign of intelligent life beyond Earth, the astrophysicist Avi Loeb offers a forceful rejoinder to Fermi. Loeb, a professor at Harvard, argues that the absence of evidence regarding life elsewhere is not evidence of its absence. What if the reason we haven't come across life beyond Earth is the same reason I can never find my keys when I'm in a hurry? Not because they don't exist, but because I did a slapdash job looking for them. You know, part of this is about the comet that orbited the Earth, Oumuamua. But here's the reality. If life exists elsewhere, we can't travel faster than light, and neither can they, and the universe is flying apart, separating a distance, so it doesn't really matter. And really, it's a waste of time to even look. If they want to come find us, but we don't have the tech to even get there, so why bother?